It's been a wild 72 hours for Max Verstappen, and here to help us break it all down from the Netherlands, Dutch motorsport reporter Nelson Valkenburg. Nelson, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us. We appreciate it.
No problem.
For Max Verstappen, what are you hearing?
Well, it's been a wild 72 hours. It's been a wild 3, 4, 5 months. It's insane, the amount of noise we're hearing in the paddock. And it started last week in Austria with that pen interview that George Russell gave. George Russell seemed to open the door. That created a lot of interest and a lot of questions for Toto Wolff, for Max Verstappen. What I'm hearing is that there's definite conversations going on, and whether or not you believe it, it depends on who you talk to last. It seems in this paddock everybody has an opinion about it, but the people in the know also aren't conclusive. Some people think we're weeks away from a contract. Otherwise, some people are saying maybe for 27. What I know is that he's super unhappy. He's unhappy with the car. He's unhappy with current leadership, the way they are treating the fact that they're too slow. And this may be a ploy to get them moving, but it seems more serious than that. And I think there's a real opportunity here for Mercedes and Verstappen to do something, and it seems serious.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that Mercedes-Verstappen sort of relationship, because I've spoken with Toto Wolff before about this in the past, and he told me that Max is one of those drivers that simply just got away from him. What is their relationship like?
I think it's very amicable. I think it's the one that got away for Toto. He missed out in that year that he didn't have a seat. Red Bull did with Toro Rosso at that point, and he's been trying to right that wrong for years. Is there an opportunity now? I think there is. I think they're going for it. Also, mostly because maybe Verstappen is more open to it now than he would have been 2 years ago. And that's, I think, where we are right now.
When we take a look at the teammates, obviously, with George Russell currently partnered with Kimi Antonelli, hypothetically, if one of the Mercedes drivers weren't brought back to Mercedes, and if Max were, hypothetically again, moved into a Mercedes seat, who do you see leaving Mercedes?
Weirdly, I think it would be George. While Verstappen-Russell lineup would be amazing, it seems that Kimi is their long-term prospect. They've invested a lot in him. Where do you put him then? How do you make sure his upward curve, his development is there? I think if it were to happen, it would be a Verstappen-Kimi Antonelli lineup. And Antonelli was asked about this last week, and he gave a very interesting answer that he would enjoy racing with either of them. So in his mind, he is set for next year. He's not even being asked whether or not he's driving next year, but for George Russell it's completely different. And on Thursday when we had the press conference here, it was incredible. 20, 30 questions to George Russell just about the contract. So the pressure is there, whether or not it's only external or if there's something really happening there. That's for the next 2 or 3 weeks, I feel.
How big of a story is this, back home in the Netherlands for you guys?
It is huge. Every Verstappen fan has multiple Red Bull shirts in his closet. Can you imagine what they could do on merch alone if he actually goes? But of course, where Verstappen isn't happy where he is right now, the Dutch fans aren't either. They're afraid that he can't compete for wins and they want him to do better. There is the 2021 of it all though, and there was this narrative of Mercedes and Hamilton on the one side and Red Bull and Verstappen on the other. So it could be quite a culture shock, but it's definitely talk of the town in the Netherlands.
If this was a pendulum sort of swinging, where would you put it on Max Verstappen actually leaving?
Closer than 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
I see an opportunity, but there's a lot of water that needs to go under the bridge and a lot of conferences with lawyers to see if it's actually an opportunity. He has a contract at Red Bull, and that's the big question. Can they get out of it in a nice enough way?
And that's the thing with that out clause, that it just seems like nobody actually really knows. Aside from Max Verstappen, Christian Horner, Red Bull Racing, and Max's management.
Yeah, we definitely don't know the ins and outs of the contract. But on the other hand, what if you force Verstappen to stay at Red Bull and he races there against his will? You pay an awful lot of money for a situation that is potentially destructive for Red Bull. So these are very difficult times for Red Bull, very interesting times for the management of Max Verstappen, and stressful for Toto Wolff, I think.
Well, it's going to be an interesting few weeks around here. There's no question about that. Nelson Valkenburg from the Netherlands, Dutch motorsport reporter. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us.
No worries.